History is full of stories that blur the line between fact and fiction, but few are as haunting as the Children's Crusade. The legend tells of thousands of children, led by young prophets, marching across Europe, believing their innocence could reclaim the Holy Land. This tale has become a symbol of faith, innocence, and the dangers of blind belief. But how much of it is true? Over centuries, the story has been retold, embellished, and misunderstood. Today we'll unravel the myth, examine the evidence, and discover what really happened in 1212. Let's begin by exploring the dramatic legend that has captivated imaginations for generations. The traditional story passed down through generations begins in the fateful year of 1212. It's a tale shrouded in mystery, faith, and ultimately profound disappointment. This was a time when the official crusades, those grand military expeditions to the Holy Land, had largely failed to achieve their objectives. Hope was fading for a swift Christian victory in the East. The dream of reclaiming Jerusalem seemed increasingly distant. Amidst this backdrop of disillusionment, in the heart of France, a young shepherd boy named Stephen of Cloyes emerged. He was an unlikely figure to ignite such fervent passion. He claimed to have received a divine message, a letter directly from Jesus Christ himself. This letter, he said, contained a sacred calling. The message was a bold one, a call for a new crusade not led by seasoned knights and armies, but by the pure and innocent, the children of Europe. Stephen's fervent preaching, filled with youthful conviction, drew thousands of children and young people to his banner. His words resonated deeply with a population yearning for hope. They were utterly convinced that their innocence, their untainted hearts, would be the key to winning God's favor, a favor that had seemingly eluded the adult crusaders. They believed that their faith was so strong that it would miraculously part the waters of the Mediterranean Sea, allowing them to walk on dry land all the way to Jerusalem. Simultaneously across the continent in Germany, another figure, Nicholas of Cologne, inspired a remarkably similar movement. He too called upon the young. Nicholas, with unwavering determination, led tens of thousands of children southwards, embarking on a perilous journey over the treacherous Alpine mountains. They were driven by the same unwavering belief that a divine miracle awaited them at the edge of the sea, a testament to their pure faith. But as they reached the shores, the miracle they so fervently anticipated never materialized. The sea remained stubbornly unparted. At bustling port cities like Marseille and Genoa, the children's hopes crashed against the unyielding waves. The sea simply refused to yield. From this point onward, the legend takes a decidedly darker turn, filled with shadows and whispers of betrayal. It is said that two unscrupulous merchants offered Stephen's weary and disillusioned followers free passage on their ships, seemingly a gesture of kindness. But their true intentions were far more sinister. Instead of transporting the children to the Holy Land, they callously sold them into slavery in the bustling markets of North Africa. Meanwhile, Nicholas's group, facing immense hardship and dwindling hope, fractured into smaller, desperate bands. A small contingent managed to reach the distant city of Rome, seeking solace and guidance. There they were granted an audience with the Pope, who, recognizing the futility of their quest and the immense suffering they had endured, absolved them of their vows and urged them to return home. However, the journey home proved to be as devastating as the journey out. Many, weakened by hunger, disease, and utter exhaustion, perished along the way. The arduous mountain paths and treacherous roads became their final resting place, marking a tragic end to their ill-fated crusade. The story of the Children's Crusade, as it has been told and retold for centuries, serves as a poignant reminder of the power of faith, but also of the devastating consequences of betrayal, naivety, and ultimately, profound heartbreak. It's a story that resonates with a deep sense of loss and unfulfilled potential. But amidst the captivating narrative and the enduring legend, a crucial question lingers. Is this dramatic account truly an accurate reflection of what really happened during that tumultuous year? To unravel the truth, we must delve deeper, examining the historical records and scrutinizing the real figures who stood at the heart of this extraordinary, yet tragic, episode in history. Let's look closer at the real figures behind the legend. Stephen of Cloyes and Nicholas of Cologne, figures shrouded in both fact and myth, were real people who lived during a tumultuous period in European history. But their stories, passed down through generations, are far more complex and nuanced than the simple legends often suggest. The historical accounts are fragmented, leaving much room for interpretation and speculation. Stephen, a young shepherd from the village of Cloyes in France, claimed to have experienced a profound divine vision, a message directly from God. He didn't call for war or a military campaign, but instead led crowds in a massive demonstration of faith and religious fervor, urging people to turn towards God. His movement resonated deeply with the poor and disenfranchised, those who felt marginalized by society, and were seeking spiritual renewal and hope outside the established and often corrupt official crusades. They yearned for a direct connection with the divine. However, the King of France, Philip II, remained unimpressed by Stephen's movement and the growing crowds, viewing them as a potential threat to his authority. He swiftly ordered the crowds to disperse and return to their homes. The dramatic and often repeated tale of betrayal by unscrupulous merchants, who supposedly offered to transport the children to the Holy Land but instead sold them into slavery, was a later addition to the story, likely embellished over time. Nicholas of Cologne, on the other hand, led a more diverse group of people from the Rhineland region, including not just young people, but also men, women, and entire families seeking religious fulfillment on a long and arduous pilgrimage south towards the Holy Land, fueled by the belief that God would miraculously part the Mediterranean Sea for them, allowing them to walk to their destination. Their journey proved to be incredibly brutal and unforgiving. Many succumbed to the harsh conditions and died while attempting to cross the treacherous Alpine mountains. When the anticipated miracle failed to materialize, and the sea remained stubbornly unparted, the group began to splinter and lose faith, with many abandoning the pilgrimage. Some, disillusioned and exhausted, decided to settle in the Italian port city of Genoa, seeking a new life. Others, still clinging to their faith, continued to follow Nicholas on to Rome, hoping to receive guidance and blessings from the Pope. The Pope, while acknowledging and praising their zeal and devotion, ultimately released them from their pilgrimage vows, recognizing the futility of their quest, and urging them to return to their homes and families. Tragically, very few of those who embarked on this ill-fated pilgrimage survived the arduous and perilous journey back to their homelands. These were not organized armies comprised solely of children, as the legend often depicts, but rather desperate masses of people, driven by poverty, hardship, and a fervent desire for hope and salvation. Over time, the legend of the Children's Crusade grew and evolved, often obscuring the reality of what was essentially a tragic pilgrimage fueled by religious fervor and social unrest, not a military campaign. So how did the story become so distorted and transformed into the popular yet inaccurate narrative we know today? The answer lies in the complex interplay of historical events, religious beliefs, and the power of storytelling to shape our understanding of the past. For centuries, the story of the Children's Crusade has been told and retold, often with embellishments and dramatic flair. But modern historians, armed with new perspectives and rigorous methodologies, have re-examined the original sources, meticulously analyzing the available evidence. And through careful scrutiny and cross-referencing of these historical records, they've come to a startling conclusion. The truth is very different from the legend that has been passed down through generations. The romanticized image of innocent children marching to the Holy Land simply doesn't hold up under historical investigation. The key word in medieval accounts, often translated simply as children, meant not just children in the modern sense but also the poor, the dispossessed, and the landless, anyone young in experience or low in social status. It encompassed a much broader segment of the population than we might initially assume. The so-called Children's Crusade was actually a series of unauthorized pilgrimages, fueled by religious fervor and social desperation, undertaken primarily by the impoverished and marginalized. These were not armies of children but rather groups of people of all ages and backgrounds seeking a better life, or perhaps a better afterlife. These were spontaneous movements of the desperate, driven by a potent mix of religious zeal and economic hardship. They were seeking spiritual salvation, a divine intervention in a time of widespread famine, social upheaval, and profound uncertainty. The promise of redemption was a powerful lure. Their goal, at least initially, was peaceful pilgrimage and conversion of the Muslim population in the Holy Land, not violent war or conquest. The story of mass enslavement by unscrupulous merchants, a key element of the traditional narrative, was a later invention, a dramatic addition to the tale. This element is conspicuously absent from contemporary sources and early chronicles, raising serious doubts about its veracity. The real tragedy, far from being a tale of betrayal and enslavement, was the devastating impact of starvation, rampant disease, and the crushing weight of shattered hope that these pilgrims experienced. The myth of innocent children being sold into slavery was likely crafted decades, perhaps even centuries later, to embellish the story, to heighten the emotional impact, and to make the narrative more dramatic and morally compelling. The truth, as uncovered by modern historians, is perhaps less sensational than the legend, but it is no less moving and perhaps even more profound in its implications. So how did the legend evolve, transforming from a series of desperate pilgrimages into the tragic tale of the Children's Crusade that we know today? The answer lies in the complex interplay of historical events, social anxieties, and the enduring power of storytelling. The transformation from a pilgrimage of the poor to a children's crusade is a case study in how legends grow. It began with a mistranslation, interpreted as children instead of poor. Later chroniclers, eager for a compelling story, added miracles, villainous merchants, and mass enslavement. The tale became a cautionary myth, echoing biblical miracles and medieval fears. By the Romantic era, the story was fully cemented as a tragic march of innocence, inspiring poems, paintings, and histories. Each retelling focused more on the children, less on the social reality. The legend overshadowed the truth, a desperate movement of the poor, not a doomed army of children. The myth's emotional power made it unforgettable, but why has it endured for so long? The Children's Crusade endures because it's a powerful emotional story. Its image, innocent children marching to their doom, evokes both sympathy and horror. The legend can be read as a testament to faith or a warning against fanaticism and exploitation. It offers clear heroes, villains, and a tragic climax, classic elements of myth. The simplicity of the narrative makes it easy to retell, overshadowing the complex reality. The story taps into deep anxieties about childhood, innocence, and loss. It's become a cultural touchstone, more myth than history. The real events were messy and tragic, but the legend's emotional resonance keeps it alive. Ultimately, the myth tells us more about our fears and hopes than about what truly happened. But what can we learn from this? The Children's Crusade reminds us to question the stories we inherit. Legends can obscure reality, especially when they're emotionally powerful. The real events of 1212 were a mass movement of the poor, not a children's army. A single mistranslation changed history's course. We must ask, who wrote the sources? What did they want us to believe? The myth's appeal lies in its simplicity, but the truth is more complex and more human. By seeking evidence and questioning assumptions, we gain a deeper understanding of the past. The real tragedy was not betrayal by villains, but the suffering of the desperate, and the lessons we must not forget.